So in terms of a conceptual approach, what is more and more coming out as essential is the need for coherence. There must not be public policy that is not embracing civil society concerns or embracing the concerns of the private sector. The whole issue of partnerships, even how we perceive and conceive of the modern security environment, there must be absolute coherence. So when we speak of the need to strengthen coordination, what we're really speaking to there is a recognition that we must be more coherent as we go. Within CARICOM, and I will speak to it later, we now have the Council of Ministers responsible for national security and law enforcement interfacing with other councils, the COFCO, the Council on Foreign Policy Coordination, and the Council on Trade and Economic Development. All of those things speak to our recognition that the multidimensional aspect that this region adopted and in fact promoted way back with the Bridgetown Declaration in 2002 is another key requirement as we seek to accurately approach the 21st century security environment. There are imperatives, and again, several of these were all mentioned before. I noted the comments by Mr. Epps, who I had the privilege to meet in New York at the UN Open-Ended Working Group in March on the Arms Trade Treaty. And there again, there are several instruments that are necessary. These are the imperatives, and at the end of the day, bearing in mind that we want to see how CARICOM has performed, I've, as I said before, just quickly develop what I refer to as a CARICOM scorecard. In terms of our conceptual approach, recently, as I said before, you see a deliberate attempt for the region to be more coherent in how it approaches its security concerns. No longer will COFCO go without reference to decisions or the discussions ongoing within the Council of Ministers responsible for national security and law enforcement. When I speak to balance, I'm referring to the extent to which we are able to leverage in our international cooperation a mix of bilateral and multilateral. We no longer are just focused on the traditional bilateral relations with partners, but we now are leveraging influence in the multilateral agencies such as the UN or in the Organization of American States. When Trinidad and Tobago became the chair of SICTE in 2005, there was a deliberate undertaking to ensure that even though Trinidad and Tobago was the chair, we represented all of the region, and so we had to find interests that were common to the region and promote those through the multilateral context. And there again, we were also intent on identifying the next CARICOM member state that will follow on when the cycle came around, and we're pleased to see that the Bahamas is now serving as the vice chair of SICTE and so will become the chair in 2010. In terms of the integration, and integration here refers to the role that we allow for private sector, civil society to play in how we develop a regional security policy. That is being done. Multidimensionality, that was adopted since the Bridgetown Declaration. And in terms of a strategic intent, and strategic intent here must be taken to mean adopting a long and broad view. I've heard reference to comprehensive approaches to security. Well, that's what it is. A strategic intent must be very long. It must not be very short-term, looking for immediate successes and only quick wins. Yes, we want quick wins because our citizens, our population want relief from the scourge of crime and so on now, but there must also be a deliberate intent and a strategic intent to pursue the long view and a very broad perspective as well. In terms of our international cooperation, this is a quick scan of where we are now. In my conclusions, I will highlight the fact that there's still a dominance of cooperation with traditional partners, and you see CARICOM SECA action plan, which is, SECA is the Central American integration movement there, similar to CARICOM. And so we have identified now where there can be interface, multilateral, at the multilateral with the multilateral at the regional level. And of course, mention was made to the important role being played by pursuing cooperation with the OAS, IDB, and UNODC. In terms of institutional strengthening, this is where we have really done best in CARICOM. It is now evident, for instance, to Washington as the seat of power of the United States that CARICOM is now a mature security cooperation partner. This goes back, of course, to 1997 and the Bridgetown Declaration of Principles, where you recall that I was just on the heels of the Shiprider issue, and that was the point where CARICOM leaders decided, listen, this is the time where we must become coordinated. We've got to strengthen our institutions to engage with our international security cooperation partners. We must become more coordinated in our approach. And so beginning then and running up to 2005, when we had the implementation of the framework for the management of crime and security, there was a deliberate and strategic move towards strengthening our institutional capacity. The result is that now we can present ourselves as a region to other regions, whether it's SICA or the United States or APEC or anywhere else in the world, as a mature and able security cooperation partner. That is why when our ministers of foreign affairs meet now with secretaries of state from the United States, there is a difference in the tone of the dialogue being engaged in with respect to pursuing our own regional security interests. And there's, of course, the very significant development of the establishment of IMPACTS, the Implementation Agency for Crime and Security, and I'll have a few brief remarks as I conclude on that. Enabling instruments, a quick scan again of where we are now. All of these instruments have essentially been implemented within the last three to 4 years, and I'm prepared to be corrected if my timeline is a bit off. But again, here you see a very deliberate and strategic move towards mobilizing and legislating and establishing the instruments that will ensure that we can respond to the requirements of the modern security environment. Just a slide which follows on. The Regional Justice Protection Program and so on. And I will make this slide presentation available for you. In terms of intelligence sharing, I don't need to go this over. Major Millington covered all of these bases earlier this morning. There's, of course, the CARICOM agreement with Interpol, which is another very significant development. And in terms of implementation, this is where we are. I'll conclude with the following observations. Clearly, our bilateral cooperation is really focused still on our traditional partners. And I ask the question, when will we start engaging Brazil, India, South Africa? They're referred to as IBSA. And so we need to possibly contemplate some of the non-traditional type partners. We do have a strong institutional framework, as I pointed out before. We do need to strengthen, and I think the point was made earlier, our capacity for extra-regional intelligence and information sharing. I know that is afoot. We're trying to strengthen our intelligence and information sharing with beyond the region. We do it well within the region. We now need to reach out to the rest of the hemisphere and other regions in the world. And finally, and most importantly, we need to build implementation capacity. The presentation by Mr. Epps highlighted the fact that there are several things that we clearly committed to, but we're not implementing. And implementation requires building capacity. This is where we do rely on our international partners to come alongside of us, where we are committed to, but we do need to work with others to develop muscle, as we say. I think Cricket World Cup 2007 forced us to develop some muscle. Hosting the Summit of the Americas forced that, but we will have to continue to grow and build our implementation capacity. I would want to end here, and I've learned how to say thank you in a couple languages, so I hope that this presentation was useful. Thank you very much.